Hey guys, welcome back to another Helix video. Today I want to share some patches with you guys. Just recently got to do a show where we did a whole set of songs by The Cult for a charity gig, and it was a lot of fun. So I built some patches specifically for these songs. Just thought it'd be fun to share them with you guys. And you guys cover The Cult, you might find these patches useful. And really, they're just kind of general rock sounds and tones. So they certainly aren't anything that you can only use to play The Cult. So you might like these tones and find some use out of them. So anyway, I'm going to kind of walk through how I set them up, let you hear how they sound. I also have some clips from the gig. It was filmed with a smartphone, so the audio is okay, but you'll get to a pretty good sense of how the patches set in the mix, how they sounded with the band, and all that sort of stuff. So I hopefully make the video a little more interesting than just me sitting here talking into a microphone. So anyway, I'm gonna mix some of that in. But anyway, we're gonna get right into these patches. Basically, my signal chain today is the same I ran at the show. Variax JTV59 running into the Helix using the digital VDI cable. And today I'm recording over USB into my laptop, but at the gig I just ran straight to front of house. So everything was Variax modeling, Helix modeling. No part of the signal was analog until the XLR out to the front of house, and it just worked beautifully. I just can't imagine gigging any other way these days. I'm so spoiled now. It just makes life so easy. But anyway, let's get into these patches. The first one is She Sells Sanctuary by The Cult. So I'm going to play a little clip from the gig, let you hear how that sounds, and then we'll talk about the patch. Okay, so now we're taking a look at the screen here. I'm going to show you how this is put together. Well, I watched some rig rundowns of Billy Duffy, and one of the things that he does is he seems to always use amps in tandem, at least two at a time. I think sometimes maybe three, or some combination of 3 or 4 amps, but always at least 2 at a time. So that's what I did here. So on this one, it's a very clean intro, and he uses a Roland JC120. So that's part of this patch. I'm using that in the bottom path here. I have a chorus in front of it to kind of emulate the chorus sound of the JC120. Above it, I'm using the Litigator because that is my favorite amp model that's ever been created. Thank you, Ben Adrian. I've got a little bit of flange in front of that, and I have a kinky boost in front of that. The kinky boost is just on one. It is not really driving. I just happen to prefer the tonal character it adds when I put it in front of an amp. In my main patch, I just have one and leave it on all the time. It's not assigned to a foot switch. It just stays on. So those are the 2 amp sounds. I've got a compressor up front, a deluxe comp, and then I have a compressor right after everything, just to kind of make everything gel a little bit. When kind of put the 2 amps together as much as possible, which is something I do a lot when I'm recording anyway. So I've started to try to incorporate techniques I use in the mixing and recording side of things into my live patches, and it seems to work really well when sending the signal out to front of house. It kind of takes a lot of the work. If the sound guy's really good, it takes a lot of the steps he would probably do, and he doesn't have to do them. They're already kind of built into the patch. So anyway, just a little bit of a side note. That comes out. This EQ block is just used for a solo boost. Basically, it's the EQ out of the Mesa. The 240, 750, and 2200 hertz. It's boosting. That's where most of the action's happening, and then a slight overall boost in volume just to push the guitar sound out front a little more, and then make the mid range a little more pronounced, so it'll stand out. Cab wise, this is the cab block that's gonna be in all the patches I'm showing you today, and pretty much this is the only cab block I use. It's the dual cab, the 2x12 interstate, and the 4x12 greenback. On the interstate cab, I'm using the 121 ribbon, and then the 57 SM57 model on the greenback. That's getting me a little bit more of an aggressive sound on the 4x12, and just kind of a little bit of a rounded sound with the ribbon mic on the 2x12. Low cutting at 80 hertz and high cutting at 8K on both of those. So really, like I said, this is the cab block I use pretty much on everything I do. I will mess around with the mics just depending on the sound I'm going for. I may use both ribbons or condensers, or end up using the 57 on both. Again, it just depends. But this seemed to work well for this setup. Just a simple volume pedal here, and then I've got two of the transistor tape delays. One is an 1/8 note delay, one's a 1/4 note, so one's a little shorter, one's a little longer. And then when they're played together, they kind of a little bit of interplay, but you have one kind of keeps going a little longer. Then the double tank reverb just to add some air to it. So in the beginning, it's a very clean intro. You kind of have all this delay and chorus and reverb, so it's really a little bit on the ambient side of things. So here's what the intro sounds like. One thing I forgot to mention, if you play a Variax, what I did was he's using a big Gretsch hollow body for this song, so I'm using a Gretsch hollow body. And if you've seen any of my Variax videos, I'd like to tinker with Workbench. I pretty much never use anything just as it comes from stock. So I'm actually stacking two different pickups. I found that I liked stacking two different pickups because it kind of filled the sound out a little bit, and it made the overall tone a little stronger having both pickups on. And in the snapshot for the verse, basically it's the same thing, just in the bridge position. So that's another advantage if you use Variax with Helix, is that you can when you're doing songs where what changes are coming, you can use this to work the guitar controls as well. So super easy. So anyway, excuse me. So here's what the verse sounds like. This basically has a little more drive to it. So. So we're on the bridge pickup now, and the only thing that really changed is I boosted the gain and the master on the litigator amp model to just give it that drive. It's still an even split between the jazz chorus and the litigator. So if you listen, you're getting that drive sound, but you also have that very clean amp sitting in the mix with it. So you have, So it's kind of neat because it retains all of that clarity of the jazz chorus, but then you have this really driving sound sitting on top of it. So it's a really, I see why he used those, or he didn't have these exact amp models, but I see why he used the jazz chorus in a driven amp, a dirty amp, particularly, there goes my pick, particularly for this song. It seems to work really well. The only other thing I did is I turned off the modulation for the verse, and then the lead, the only thing that changes is this EQ turns on. It gives you a little more volume and changes the mid-range character just a little bit. Here's what that sounds like. So it's kind of a subtle change, but live the volume kicks up, your presence kind of pushes out a little bit more. So that is She Sells Sanctuary. So I'm going to move on to the next patch. This one is a little more of just kind of a generic cult patch. It wasn't, there's nothing super specific to a song. There were several other songs we did. Pretty much Billy Duffy just had a Les Paul going into a cranked amp. So that's what this is. So I'm going to play you a little clip of Sweet Soul Sister from the gig. That's one of the songs that I use this patch for. So check that out. Okay. Okay, so we'll take a look at this patch. I used the She Sells Sanctuary patch to use as a template for this. So some of the components are the same, some are a little different. Same compressor up front, the kinky boost is there. You'll notice I moved it in front of the split. So what's happening is, since both of these amps are dirty, I wanted to have that kinky boost hit both amps. On the other patch, I wanted the Roland amp just stay super clean, so it didn't involve any boost or anything. So that's the only change there. I have a tube screamer here that kicks on for solos to give a little more drive and sustain and a little more mid-range. Litigator stayed the same, but down here we have the Friedman model. I know Billy Duffy used Marshalls for a lot of his career, but based on some rig rundowns I saw recently, he's using Friedman amps live. So the Helix just happens to have a nice Friedman amp model, so made sense to throw that in there. Same compressor. This is the same EQ for the solo boost, volume pedal all the same, cab block the same. Simple delay, just turns on for solos, then the same reverb. So basically I've got 3 snapshots, intro, or you could say verse, whatever. You can rename it whatever you want, but it's just the song, the main parts of the song. And then there's a solo with delay and one without delay, just depending on what you want. Because I pretty much stayed in snapshot mode for these songs, so that's why I just had a slight variation. If you're in stomp mode, you can just kick on whatever you want. So anyway, just without, not the solo snapshot, just the regular snapshot. Here's what that sounds like. Just a good rock and roll tone, you know, good drive, good body to it. I thought when it was coming through the PA cranked, it had a great presence to it. One thing I didn't mention, but on the Variax, essentially this is all using the Les Paul bridge. So not too much to talk about there. All right, so the solo with delay, again, this is basically just that EQ block on and then a delay. And then the tube screamer. So this is what this sounds like. So just, just a good lead sound. That the tube screamer thickens it up quite a bit. I like having a little bit of delay just to add some air to it. And so that's just really a good generic rock and roll patch, honestly. Worked great for the Cult, but you could use it for any number of applications. So, all right, moving right along. I did build another patch separately for Firewoman, because there's this clean intro part, then it goes into a heavier drive. So we'll play a little snippet of that from the gig, and then we'll talk about the patch. Okay, so that was Firewoman. We'll talk about the patch that I used for that. So again, I used the She Sells Sanctuary patch as a template to do this one. And so you're going to see kind of a lot of the same stuff. So the intro has that clean part. On this one, I'm basically, let's see. So in the intro, I'm using, actually it is the bridge position with that kind of Gretsch. I wanted just a bigger sound, that big hollow body sound for the intro. And then the verse and leads are just using a Les Paul. So anyway, back to the Helix. Same compressor up front. We've got basically another split here. Litigator and JC120 because the intro is clean. So the chorus is here like it was in the She Sells Sanctuary patch. A couple of differences. One, added a Timmy here because the once you get into the verses and the chorus and all this to Firewoman, it needed a little more drive. So I've got the Timmy that turns on, and then the drive kicks up somewhat too with the snapshots for the verses. Another thing that I'm doing is when it goes to the verse, I'm running an 80-20 split instead of a 50-50. So 80% of the sound is coming from this top path of the Litigator amp. So that's going to give us, because I left 20% of that JC120 in just to have that, a little bit of clarity and clean in the background, but sitting way farther back than it was for the She Sells Sanctuary patch. So the other thing I did, anytime you run, if you've got this stereo split and if you're running primarily just one side of it, you're losing half your signal. So I always like to come over here when the mixer block, when it comes back together, and boost this up a little bit. In this case is path A, so I put a 4 dB boost to get that volume back, because like I said, when I move the mixer up where it's 80% just one side, you just don't get as much signal, obviously, because you're not using the whole the whole stereo path. So that's why I did that. That bumps up for the verse. Same compressor and EQ, cab, volume, everything's the same. Let's see, a simple delay. Yeah, I think. Yeah, this second delay I think is used during the intro. Yeah, so simple delay is used in the intro and then the solo, and it's just a very basic, as the name implies, a simple delay. Then I used a Memory Man for to kind of add a little extra chorus to the delay sound in the intro, a little more modulation. Then the reverb block is the same. So that is Fire Woman. So I'll play a little bit of that and let you hear what this sounds like. So again, it's just kind of airy, spacey. You could also use the neck position of the guitar. I kind of flipped a coin. I liked the way both sounded. I just ended up going with the bridge position, but they both sounded pretty cool. Coming over to the verse, chorus turns off, Timmy turns on, and then, like I talked about, most of our signal is now just running through path A. So. So I really like, having that Timmy kick on. Just is like adding another gain stage to the amp. But it to me is just a good, almost like a crank Marshall. That was kind of what I was going for, just a crank Marshall sound. That's where I think the Litigator shines, because it can go from clean, almost like a clean modded Fender, Dumbly kind of thing, and then put a couple drive pedals in there and boost it a little bit, and man, it really crunches up nice. So there's that. Of course, the lead with delay is just essentially we have this EQ on and delay, but so that's pretty much that one. Okay, so we actually had one other song we rehearsed and I built a patch for that, unfortunately, at the show we didn't get to play it. We ran short on time. Kind of bummed me out because I liked the song. But this was Wild Hearted Sun, and it was a little bit later in the catalog, so tone-wise it was a little different. It was more aggressive. The distortion character was just a bit more modern, I guess you'd say. The mid-range character I thought was quite different than some of the older stuff. So I don't have a clip to play you from the gig because we didn't get to do it, but I'll just go through this patch. So it has a very clean intro, then just kind of a drive, distorted, verse and chorus, and then there's a kind of a signature lead line that he does over the choruses, and then back before the verse. So we'll kind of go through those. There's a snapshot for all that different stuff. So this one again started life as that template that we did for all the other ones, the She Sells Sanctuary. So I'm just going to kind of point out some of the differences here. Amp models are the same. I've got a Litigator, and I've got the JC120. And just for the sake of the OCD folks out there, let me get the symmetry right of this layout. Anyway, so I've got the Litigator and the JC120. I've got the same kinky boost, same chorus. I do have a super overdrive before the Litigator. So, like I said, this song was later, a little bit later in their catalog. It had a more modern sound to my ears, a little more aggressive. So I'm not using a lot of drive. It's only on 3 with the super overdrive, but it gave me a little more of that mid-range character that fit with this particular song. So there's all that. The other thing, that lead line, to my ears anyway, it sounded like in the studio he double tracked it in different registers. When we rehearsed it, when I would just play the lead line by itself up high, it sounded okay, but it lacked some fullness. So I added the pitch block and went an octave down to just kind of fill it out, give it more body, and it worked. It worked when we rehearsed it. It did work really well in doing that. I think it accomplished what I was looking to accomplish with it. So other than that, basically same cab, a couple delays. I did it was a high and low cut here, but I did do a parametric EQ. Again, the tone was different than the other one, so this parametric EQ helped me kind of shape that a little closer to what I was going for. Noise gate, and then the same reverb block. So again, it's pretty similar in as far as in the structure to the other patches. Just some of the EQ and drive settings are a bit different. So I'm just going to play through it and let you hear it. And we'll start with the intro. Then for the verses, just a little more bright, in your face, aggressive, So that's again that super overdrive, and then the parametric EQ kind of shaping that mid range a little more. So that kind of signature little lick I was telling you about, I'll play that for you with the pitch block turned on. Again, it's just adding an octave down, so it sounds like this. And like I said, just kind of adds body and fullness to that. Especially, I did have a rhythm guitar player playing chords behind me, but still, it just sounded a little empty just playing it by itself. So that just kind of helped fill it out. And then just the lead snapshot just turns the pitch off, delay, boosts the same EQ solo boost that we had on the other one. So. One thing I also want to point out on the lead snapshot, I do turn off the parametric EQ because it's actually pulling out a lot of mid-range to get that more scooped rhythm sound. So when I got to the lead, I didn't want that. I wanted the mid-range to come back into the focus because that helps push when you're doing lead especially. But that's just kind of where the guitar tone lives and where you can really, when you got keyboard, well, we didn't have keyboards in this gig, but bass and rhythm and drums, all this stuff going on, pushing that mid-range forward really, really helps stand out for solos. So that's how that block turns off for that snapshot. So anyway, Variax-wise, Les Paul, pretty straightforward stuff. One interesting note about this song, they released it, I guess, originally in D, and then there was a version that was a half step, tuned down a half a step. So because I was using a Variax, it was very, very simple. I just set all my snapshots up for the Variax to be tuned down a half a step. And it worked great. And then I got to rehearsal, and then they said, oh, well, we're going to play it in D. I'm like, all right, just give me 10 seconds. Pop down to the Helix, change the Variax back to standard tuning, bam, just done. And just, you can't do that with other traditional setups really, really easily like this. So, and then all the tempos, are set per patch, and you can set them per snapshot as well. And of course, you have the tap tempo pedal on, the foot switch on the pedal itself. So, the drummer clicks off. If it's a little different than what you have programmed, no problem, just tap along with it. And I have all the delays and modulations set up to sync to the tap tempo of the patch, whatever you set that to. So, that's pretty much it. I'll have these 4 patches up on Custom Tone. There'll be links in the description below. I'll have a link to, if you want to see the YouTube videos of some of the songs from the show. I have a few of them up. I'll put a link to that as well. I'll also put the Variax bundle that I have loaded on my guitar here. So if you want to play these patches and have it exact, it'll be that way. But just to note, it's set up the way I set up my Variax. So, for instance, I don't really use the. We'll see. So I use acoustic more than like the Telecaster sound. So I moved all my the acoustic bank sounds to the Tele bank, so it'd be closer, physically on the knob. I think I wrote over all the R-Billy settings with Telecaster. So it's a little different. It's just kind of how I do mine. So just know if you load up that bundle, just look out for that. It's not going to necessarily match what the knob says anymore. So that's totally up to you guys if you want to use the Variax bundle or not. But anyway, the last thing I just wanted before I close it out is just say, in general, Helix and Variax, I've been playing for almost 26 years now, and Helix and Variax have just made gigging so easy and so much fun. It takes you spend a little time up front building your patches, getting things set up, getting them right. But man, when you get to the gig, it's just, you don't have to think about any of this stuff. You have your snapshots lined up, your patches set up, especially if you're using the Variax and they're talking to each other. I mean, you can just play and have fun and focus on the performance, and you're not focused on, okay, here's a change in the verse to chorus, I've got to hit 3 pedals. I got to turn those 2 off, turn some back on when the solo comes. You don't have to do any of that. And I just remember the days when I had a big pedal board. It just seemed like every gig, something on the pedal board would just act weird or act up, and it was just always was a distraction to me. But it's just great. And then running direct, straight to front of house. I think, I've played in bands and with various setups, and I've been that guy with a 100-watt Marshall and a 4x12 in a club that you really just needed a practice amp to play. So I've been that guy, but to me, being able to run direct, you give the sound guy the ability to do his job without your stage volume stepping all over the mains and just messing up the mix. And you don't have people standing on one side of the room hearing you blaring over everything else, and on the other side they're hearing almost a different mix. So I love it. I love running direct. I think it's to me the much more efficient modern way of doing things. I bring, like for this gig in particular, I bring a powered monitor. I have an Alto, just a cheap Alto TS110A. I think I pay like $250 maybe. When in situations like this gig, I didn't know what the sound. It was a quick changeover. There were 4 bands playing in the space of a little over 2 hours. So it was like there was like a 10-15 minute window to change over from band to band. We weren't even getting sound check, much less dialing in monitor mixes. So I brought my own powered monitor just so knew I would be able to hear myself on stage, and it worked great. So you'll notice in the clips I shared, it was just a guy with a smartphone. So when he got near my side of the stage, he's picking up a lot more. He's like 2 or 3 feet away from my monitor. So it sounds like, when he's standing there, I am too loud for the overall mix. But for everywhere, practically everywhere in the room, if you weren't just standing right 2 feet in front of me, it didn't really get in the way of the mix or anything like that in the room. But anyway, just kind of a plug for, man, these 2 pieces of gear make life so easy for a touring musician, a gigging musician. And I don't even gig that much anymore, maybe a dozen or so times a year. And even that, it just simplifies life so much. So anyway, line 6 advertisement aside, all the links are in the description below. If you like this video, if you like what I do, please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And let me know any ideas for future videos you want to see. Let me know. And I also thought about, I don't normally do like guitar teaching videos, but any of these songs are fresh in my mind. I just learned them. So if there's any of these songs that you guys by the Cult that you guys want to see how to play, and if you can't find a good video online, put a link in or a comment below, and I might just get around to making a guitar lesson video. No promises on that though. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.